All right, baby boomers. I think some of the criticisms make sense, and I think though that they're being unfairly blamed on stuff that didn't really have anything to do with them. So I'll start off by giving examples. So this is basically this site's talking about the wealth transfer. So basically saying that there's this huge income that baby boomers have, whether it be, stocks, monies and savings, whether it be, housing, stuff like that. This $30 trillion wealth transfer is what they're talking about. I'm not going to read the article. It doesn't matter what it says here, but I think this is a criticism that I would say makes sense on baby boomers. So it says, first, baby boomers have a you only live once mindset. I think that's pretty true. They do. Part of it is, I guess, a bit of a meme, where you see the ads and they encourage baby boomers to spend their money, and they say, "Oh, don't worry about things. Don't worry about things. Just spend the money. Spend the money." A part of that, I don't know how much that was pushed onto baby boomers, and they got their mindset through basic propaganda. Or if it's something that came a bit naturally. I'd say it's probably a bit of both. But they, like it goes on to say there, they seem to be driven to new experiences and they stay active throughout their golden years, preferring to pursue their passions and work doing what they love. Many baby boomers are pursuing flexible working arrangements rather than fully retiring. In turn, they may dip into their retirement savings while they're still working. A lot of basically, I would say millennials, some Gen X, not so much, but I think it's more of a millennial, I guess, complaint about baby boomers. And that is something that is brought up a lot, that they're staying in the workforce, even though they might have very large retirement funds and they could easily quit. A lot of the basically head people, we're not talking about your just, I don't know, general sort of old guy who's a mechanic or something. We're talking about sort of the uppers. Maybe you sort of see them in New York and the cities and those kinds of places. So this isn't a criticism of everyone, but that is I think that's something that's pretty legitimate, that a lot of them do stay in the workforce, which I don't know if that's much of a complaint. Because I mean, if you're doing something you genuinely enjoy, being forced out to quit, you wouldn't want that pushed on to the generation you're in or the generation below if it's something that's still okay to do. So I think that's sort of a bit of an unfair criticism. But where the criticism is spot on is baby boomers spending their kids' inheritance on adventure and self-discovery. Almost 1/5 of baby boomers dip into their kids' inheritance to go on holidays, and the vast majority don't feel guilty about it. Of the 18%, this is a study in Australia, over the 18% of Australians, seniors who travelled using their money intended for their children, 85% say they didn't worry about spending it, and almost half subscribe to the maxim that you only live once, as the survey found. And it goes on to say just over half of it was their money and they deserved to enjoy it, or that the children already had their own money, according to a survey of 1,000 people age 50. This is definitely a meme that has been, or propaganda that's basically definitely been pushed on baby boomers. It's only come from them. Previous generations, it was pretty normal for you to want to leave something behind, or you would work and maybe you'd be around 50 and you'd go, okay, well, I'm doing this and hopefully I can give something to my kids to make them better off. So let's say a house. So let's say if you go, okay, well, hopefully I want, say three, I've been able to afford 3 houses. And then that way I can pass down to, 2 of my children or one of my child, and give him like a bit of a leg up. That seems to be a normal thing. Everyone that I talk to that's around my age and below, that seems to be something they're striving for. But it is a bit bizarre that that a lot of, not all of them, a lot of baby boomers have this weird, I don't know, this thing about it saying it's mine, not yours, and tough luck. Which, if you look at sort of, I don't know, basically families through time, this is a very new thing. It's not a normal thing to do to, you know, your children, or you think about grandchildren, think, you know, stuff like that. It's not something that, if that was done in the past, I don't think many Western countries, especially, well, basically anywhere in the world would have that kind of attitude and would be successful for the last generation. It just really wouldn't. So I think that's definitely a criticism that is deserving of baby boomers, where they do seem to have this attitude where they just completely don't give a shit. I don't really know why. It just is what it is. But there is, so this article, it doesn't matter exactly what the article is about. The comment's been deleted. But here's some examples. So, taking credit for everything that's been invented from 1965, when the oldest baby boomer was still too young to have graduated. Plenty of people from the generation before yours have carried on inventing things since 1965, which is true, because a lot of, you know, things on immigration, things on particular things that was pushed on to the baby boomers in that 1965 generation, pretty much around the West, it wasn't baby boomers. They seem to take that blame. They say, oh, well, boomers let this happen, and boomers, you know, was around when they passed this bill. That's actually not true. It was a generation before. So that is I feel like an unfair criticism of baby boomers, which they often, basically any sort of disagreements that people have with whatever went on through the 60s, that wasn't so much baby boomers. Baby boomers was more of a 70s and 80s, and I guess you'd say 90s, because they were in the majority in that bracket as well. But yeah, to go so far into the 60s and to blame particular immigration acts and those kinds of things onto baby boomers, that's it. Basically, it wasn't their fault. They were very young when those kinds of things were pushed, and you know, they say, oh, the baby boomers didn't ask the right questions. Well, to be fair, when they're that young, they're not going to ask those kinds of questions. That's really the generation before that should be, I guess, the word blame, but back then it was very different. I mean, you had very few media sources, and they basically lied about a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't call it it's nothing to be blamed onto, not onto the group of people, you'd say, because you wouldn't know. I mean, when someone says this won't affect this situation, and you go, okay, and you believe them, and it's something that's never happened before, it's something you can't look back on to sort of compare things, then it's not really, I wouldn't put that blame onto them. But yeah, so I think, to sum it up, boomers, they get blamed for a lot. They get blamed for a lot of whatever happened in the 60s and particular immigration acts and those kinds of things. But that's not really their fault. Do they tend to have this sort of weird attitude about their money that it's almost childish? It's childlike, in the way that it's like, it's mine. Yes, I think that criticism stands pretty, not to every single person, of course, but to a very large group, yes, it does. They seem to have this, they seem to not understand that it isn't as easy to get a job as it was for them, where, you know, basically job placement, job opportunities was way better in the baby boomers' time compared to now. paying for things like housing way cheaper, paying, water bills and all that kind of stuff cheaper. There was one, I don't know if it was in this site, when people use the term spending their kids' inheritance, it is like the kids have an entitlement. Like it's not that. Like, I get it that there's might be some people that stay at home when they don't have to, or maybe some of them do have a particular. Millennials have criticisms of themselves, which usually are true, but this is where baby boomers don't get it. It's not a sense. I don't think it's like an entitlement. I think it's this sort of this looking back at the past, and this idea of selling your home that is, might be a nice 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom home, and selling it for an RV to travel in, and then leaving yourself absolutely stuffed because, millennials are sort of more aware. You're not going to get your money back on that. So basically, you've sort of screwed yourself. Where baby boomers have this sort of weird issue where they say, oh, that's entitlement. It's more just looking back at the past and saying, well, hang on a minute, this isn't exactly how, is this the way it should be? Is this the way it should work? Having an inheritance, you would think, well, I saved up their money saved up your money for a reason. It's not just so you can just go, okay, I'll blow it all. If you have a family, you immediately start to think, okay, well, I'll give them a leg up, like I've talked about before. But yeah, baby boomers do have this very strange thing about their money. And I can't find it now, but there was somewhere in an article here. So it says, according to a recent survey, 1,000 grandparents ages 50 to 70. I don't think 50-year-olds count as boomers, but anyway, 1 in 6 plan to spend all of their money before they die. And then there was another study where in their 50s and 60s found only 40% plan to leave inheritances, while 30% expected to spend all of their money. Now, I guess that really should depend. I mean, it depends what your savings are. I mean, if your savings are something like $10,000, then obviously, you spend it all. You got to count funeral costs and you count everything else. That's sort of normal. But this is what I mean, 40%. Only 40% plan to leave inheritance, which is kind of crazy to me. That's a massive chunk to just sort of look at a family member and be like, meh, you can just start all over again, which doesn't really make sense to me, because usually you would think, well, that's my attitude anyway, is you would think, okay, I want to make it better for the previous generation. So whatever my kids, whatever age they might be in whatever situation, you want them to live through better times than you did. So you go, okay, I want this constant improvement. I don't understand this attitude of, I'm just going to spend all of it and tough luck. Like, yeah, that's very strange to me that the baby boomers have that attitude about it. I can't find it now, but one of the complaints was that they were saying that baby boomers tend to be lazy, and that's not true. I think that they went through and they worked. They still worked hard. It's just that I guess it comes across maybe like that to some people because it was an easier time to get jobs, to move up through companies. They didn't have to deal with as much competition. They didn't have to deal with as, immigration issues and those kinds of stuff. So it was easier to, a company would look in-house rather than getting, a particular visa from overseas and paying someone a little bit less. But those are my thoughts. So to sum it up, yeah, I think that they do have they are a bit different with money than other generations. There is a little bit of issues there with sort of not getting to certain things, not realizing that it's not as easy as it has been in the past. But I do think that they're also unfairly blamed for things that they were too young for. So, or things that you would, it's easy to look back on the past and to say, oh, I would have done it differently. Well, we see different things. We've got YouTube, we've got the internet, we've got multiple different sources of news. Back then, you might say it was trusting, but that was kind of the attitude at the time. So I wouldn't blame some of the stuff that they get blamed for in the past. But yeah, catch us next time.